Okay, folks, this is a weird build, but this is what we do on this channel. We take chances. We do weird things. Actually, I found this glass thing at Home Goods with my wife. If anybody knows what that is, that glass thing on the left that I'm using, please tell me. But it's weird. Open on top, open on the bottom. And I've done orchid mountains before. This is my first orchid mountain in the trophy case. And this one came out good. I wanted it more wild. It's a really cool orchid that's been blooming a lot. But with this trophy case, I had either to do another orchid mountain or use this weird glass thing that I've had for a while now. And I decided to go with the glass thing. So the first orchid mountain, I used epoxy to seal the wood. This time I'm just using silicone. I think epoxy was overkill and the silicone do just fine. So it was actually harder than I thought to get it to stay flat, so I just gave up and just rubbed it on. Once it was dry, I wanted to glue this tree together. I knew I wanted like some sort of marshy looking dead tree, so I just built a little one that I thought would fit nicely in that open space on the right there. And crazy glue is the best. I mean, it cures in almost no time. I held it there for probably 10 seconds. And once that was done, I put the thing on. Now this was a mistake. I should have put it on before the silicone cured. I wanted to measure some stuff out, but it really wasn't necessary. And it would have been nice to cure it on, so I had to add silicone around the base. But anyway, this is just sphagnum moss. I rehydrated it and shoved it behind each one of these levels. So here was the rub of this build. I wanted it to stay elegant looking. The glass is really nice. The 3-tiered glass cups are cool. And I wanted to kind of keep it glassy and not just do a custom background around everything. If I wanted to do that, I could have just used a simpler model in cork bark. You know, like the usual background we would do for a vivarium. But I wanted to keep it cool looking. Like I wanted that elegant look. And my idea behind this build was to have some sort of hanging gardens, you know? I love antiquity, the hanging gardens of Babylon. Something fancy. And I thought a nice layer of dirt, no false bottom, covered with orchid bark was the perfect base. And then in the same for each cup, to keep that elegant look, I just put some cork bark in each cup, in each one of those tiers as well. And then the sphagnum moss behind each tier serves a purpose as far as keeping the humidity on the plants. So each plant up there's going to be an orchid up top, and then the vines, but they all require a level of humidity. So I thought if I shoved some sphagnum moss back there and just kept that hydrated at all times, and then kept the top on the trophy case, that would be plenty of humidity without saturating the bottom. So it's definitely a balance. You can't just, you know, like in a vivarium with a drain, you can make it rain all day and not have to worry about oversaturating anything, especially if you have a fan system, which I highly recommend, by the way. But in these little glass cases with no false bottom, it's a little bit tricky, but I think with the sphagnum moss, like I said, it'll cover it. And then the one thing about the orchid bark, this is a high quality orchid bark I got from Glass Box or Glass Box Tropicals, and it looks cool. Like I think the orchid bark keeps that elegant look like I was hoping. I think the dirt would get a little saturated in the no drain tiers, so the orchid bark works well with the sphagnum moss behind it. And that's my first orchid. It's an epiphyte, obviously, and you know it's small, which was key. I actually bought 2. The other one was way too big. And this is just some carpet moss. I thought it would adhere to the dirt orchid bark base and, you know, give it a little bit of a jungle vibe without making the whole thing look like a jungle. If that makes any sense, give it some color. Moss is the easiest thing in a closed terrarium to keep, in my opinion. So that's what I did there. And then on this side, I laid more sphagnum moss down to give it sort of a wetter side, again, without really soaking the bottom. The tree was actually a pain in the ass. So I should have glued it, and I actually tried to glue it one time, but then I wanted to move it, and then I just decided, you know what, it's supposed to be a dead tree anyway. And if you ever go hiking and you get to the alpine zone, you see these like dead trees. That's what I was hoping to capture there. And I just kept moving it. I would put something down, it would fall over, and I would move it. The good thing is there's so much in there that once it reaches its final destination here, the final position, it won't move again. It's not going to get knocked around. There's no animals in there. So I think the overall it'll be fine, but that was what I was struggling with here. And then putting the vines in was super hard. So I started with these turtle shells, or the string of turtles, and I actually wound up taking most of those out because I didn't like the way it looked. It looked kind of stringy in there. It just didn't sit right. So I went with, you know, my favorite, oak leaves, which I started cultivating a while ago, and they always grow. This is the coolest plant, I think. It looks awesome, easy to cultivate, and like I said, I want that hanging gardens type look. So there's 3 different vines in here. There are some string of turtles still on the bottom. There's the oak leaves. And then there's this other, I honestly don't know what it's called. I totally forgot over the years. I've been using this right here. And don't remember what it is. I never bothered to look it up because it doesn't matter. If you find, in this hobby, if you find something that works for you, you just roll with it. And over time, you might not remember. I don't have the greatest memory. But it's a really good vine. I could look it up and put it in the notes for you. Or if somebody knows it, just comment. But it's got this red base vine, like you see the red on the actual vine. And then the leaves are these circular things, which gives it some interest. And it's so easy. You just keep it wet and it grows. That's it. The oak leaves are a little bit more difficult. They're not terribly hard, but they're more difficult than this plant. This plant is die hard. But that's after one day. The mold started growing there. I mean, it'll cycle out, but especially I didn't put springtails in yet. I'm going to wait a little bit. But one day that mold started growing, and I actually think it looks pretty cool. It's definitely not my favorite. I had this glass thing, like I said, I thought we can do something cool with it. I think over time, this is one of those ones that's going to look cooler 6 months from now. When the vines come in, the moss is growing. But thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.